Hey y'all, Tanny Cooks here, and today I'm going to be making some country style pork ribs. Now, I love these country style pork ribs more than actual ribs. And I say more than actual ribs because country style pork ribs, the meat you see with that label, it's actually made from the pork shoulder. So it may contain a bone in it, or it may be boneless, but even if it contains that bone, it's not from the rib section of the pig. I didn't mean to point at myself when I was gesturing about the pig. It was kind of a Freudian gesture slip. But country style pork ribs come from the pork shoulder, and I really enjoy them because they are so much more meaty than ribs. Take a look at that. You can see the fat marbling in it. I don't bother to cut fat off before I cook it. Look at all that meat though, compared to pork spare ribs or even beef ribs. So what I'm going to do is wash these ribs, dry them well, season them, and then we're going to put them in the oven and we're going to cook them low and slow. So I'm going to cook these at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of hours and then take them out, drain off some of the water that's going to seep from the meat and some of the seasonings we use, and then barbecue sauce them up and then stick them back in the oven for another hour. So they're going to be so tender and so flavorful. They're going to taste like ribs, but be so much more meaty than your usual beef or pork ribs. So let's get to cooking. So first we're going to wash this meat. Of course, I'm going to use white vinegar. This is 2 packs of boneless country style pork ribs. Each pack was a little more than 2 pounds. Each pound was like $4.79, so each pack was about $10. Vinegar is a tenderizer for meat, so I'm going to let this sit in this vinegar water for just a couple of minutes. I don't want the color of my meat to get too discolored, so I'm not going to let it sit for long, but I just want it to tenderize the meat. You really could rinse these off because they aren't gritty at all. These don't have a bone, and just splash them with vinegar and let them sit, but this vinegar water will be just fine. You will notice more fat on some pieces than others, but I don't cut it off. But if that bothers you, then you could cut off some of the fat. I don't sear these before I bake them in the oven. We're just going to bake them in the oven low and slow like I said. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut up an organic Vidalia onion. I started buying my onions organic, and y'all, it was hard because this bag of Vidalia onions organic was $4.99, and I could have got the yellow onions that were not organic for half that price, but I did read a while ago that root vegetables do tend to, because they're underground, they kind of sit there and absorb more of the pesticides sprayed on them. So my concern was maybe that more of the pesticides would get in the vegetables that are root vegetables like onions and potatoes. So my goal in the future is to either grow my own organic onions and potatoes, which I'm not doing this year, or to buy them organically. So the other good thing about spending extra money for these organic root vegetables is that I'm being much more careful that I don't waste them. So when I buy them, I make sure I do use them up because I can't be throwing away all this expensive produce. Okay, so I chopped up a Vidalia onion, and what I'm going to do is put it in the bottom of the pan that I'm going to bake my meat in. It's going to go in the bottom of the pan, and then I'll just situate the meat around it, above it and below it. Onions do release some of their liquid. They contain water, so that will help keep our meat juicy and tender as it bakes. So now I'm going to put this off to the side, and I'm going to season my meat. So the seasonings I'm going to use for this meat include thyme leaves, granulated onion, granulated garlic or garlic powder, ground black pepper, ground mustard. This mustard is made by McCormick. I have a link to it in the description box below. I love to buy my big containers of seasoning from Amazon, and you can do that as well with my link. I also bought this Badia smoked paprika from Amazon. I just hate that this seller put this label on the front, but I'm due to buy some more, and I'll try that out with you as well. I'm also using no salt, sodium-free seasoning. This is great for people who don't want as much sodium. It has mostly potassium in it, but you want to be sure to check the nutrition facts and make sure it works for the people you're serving it to. So someone with kidney issues may not want to use this because this has so much potassium, and people with kidney issues may not need that. I'm also using this delicious barbecue sauce made by Sticky Fingers. So I'm being generous with my seasonings that do not contain salt, which would be all of these. And you really could wash and season your meat the night before, or if you have a few hours to season it ahead of time, you certainly could. But if you're doing like I'm doing and you're just seasoning it right before you're going to cook it, that'd be fine as well. I'm also using some organic coconut aminos. I use this in place of Worcestershire sauce. Sometimes Worcestershire sauce may contain soy, which is something I generally try to stay away from. So add some of that to your meat if you like. I like to massage my seasonings into my meat. I'm using liquid and ground seasoning, dry seasoning, so I want to massage it all together. And as you do this and turn your meat, you can decide for yourself if you need to add more seasoning to the other side, and I did. So I added more of the seasonings that I felt was lacking. Now I'm adding my seasoned and massaged meat to my baking pan with my sliced onions. And I'm just situating my onions all around my meat. I'm adding a little bit, about 1/4 of a cup of water. If you have some beef or chicken broth, you can certainly add that. I just want to be sure this cooks with a little bit of liquid so it doesn't stick to the pan or anything like that. And y'all, look at how delicious this meat looks before we even stick it in the oven. For the first part of the cooking process, I'm going to top my pan with aluminum foil, and I just seal it tightly on all sides so that it can cook and steam together. We're going to bake this at 300 degrees for 2 hours. Now you can check yours at 90 minutes and see if it looks like it's ready. You can also use your meat thermometer to verify that the meat is cooking through as you expect it to. Now, as I take the lid off, look at how the meat has cooked. You can see the extra liquid that has seeped into the pan from both the meat and the onions, and you can see how the meat has really cooked down and is actually starting to pull away from the bone a little bit, which is exactly what we want to see. I cooked an additional pack of pork loin country style ribs that had the bone in it, so that's what you see there. So I have a mixture now in this pan, and even though it is smelling good and it's looking fabulous and it's so tender, you can just pick up one piece and see it's almost where we want it to be. So now the next step is, in this hot pan with this hot liquid, I'm going to drain out some of this liquid because I don't want my barbecue sauce to be too diluted. So I added cool water running down my sink, and I poured some of this fatty liquid out. Now I know you shouldn't put fat down your sink, but I just did a little bit. I added some Dawn detergent, and then I'm running hot water down it to try and keep my pipes clear. So now that that's done, I'm going to add some of the Sticky Fingers Carolina Gold mustard to half of my country style ribs. I like a variety of sauces, and so on one half I decided to do Carolina Gold. The other half I'm going to do the Memphis Smoky barbecue sauce. So use the barbecue sauce of your choice. If you want to make homemade barbecue sauce, I'm sure that will be absolutely delicious. And so look at how delicious it is. We're going to let this cook uncovered in the oven for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. Be sure to keep an eye on your oven and make sure it's cooking to your liking. And this is how mine looks. Now, after 45 minutes, you can absolutely baste this. So just take a spoon or a baster and gather up some of the liquid that's in the pan and the barbecue sauce and just top your ribs just to help it stay moist, even though we are intentionally cooking this without being covered in aluminum foil. And there you have it, y'all. Let it cool down a little bit and plate it. And I like to add a little bit more barbecue sauce on top. So here's a drizzle of Carolina Gold. Yum, yum, yum. Look at that, y'all. So delicious, so flavorful, and it's super tender as well. Look at that. So let me know in the comments below if you like to cook country style ribs. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel.